Thank you. Welcome everyone. So we'll just get kicked off here and get started. We want to leave enough time to do some Q&A because that's often where we can really address and support you. So I'm Vanessa Garza and Kelly Angelina is here too.
Hi.
We've both been a part of GALS from the very beginning. So we're in our 4th year now. And we didn't really outline an agenda with major bullet points, so we kind of chunked what we'll be going over. I'll take the first section, Kelly will take the second, and then I'll close it out. So let's get started. We want to cover some context with you first. I know we're in different spaces, as was stated at the beginning. If you're just kicking off your first online learning week, that's okay. Everything that we're covering is still relevant, no matter where your starting point is. For us, this is week 4. So a recap of what our first 3 weeks look like is listed up there for you. And obviously, week 1 of online learning was still a hybrid experience for us due to connectivity constraints and some students having inadequate tech devices despite our best efforts to have done a survey with them prior to school closure. We've also aligned our operations team with our instructional team, and it's more integrated now. I've been hearing about this from other colleagues as well. And finally, there are some routines and rituals that remain in place. And that's the fact that the 4 of us who you see in the corner, that's the leadership team there. We share a very small office when we are working live, and to compensate for that, we have a check-in call every morning at 9 a.m. And our PDs have always been on Wednesdays. Our grade level teams have always been on Thursdays. We've adjusted the time now that we're remote, but those structures are still in place now. So when it comes to establishing or sustaining staff climate and culture in an environment and in a time that nobody could have prepared for, we thought of it as, how do we shift from surviving to thriving? And at the end of the day, it comes down to our leadership and a lot of the things that happen behind the scenes in order for the staff to feel like their bandwidth is being preserved, or that we're trying to buffer their bandwidth, and that the families feel that we're holding their hands through the unknown. So these 3 points are what we used to guide us in our decisions as we rolled out our online learning school, essentially, and how to do that in a way that you hold the tension between what all of the stakeholders need. What do the students need? What do the parents need? And what do the teachers need? On the right side, you see a snapshot of our team. We had started in the beginning to do Monday staff meetings and invited them to do funky attire or funky accessories. And we used that to then promote our first online community meeting, which is something that we used to do monthly school-wide in person. And now we moved to doing it weekly with our students. So this is a pretty long list as far as what we took care of in our first 3 weeks of going for remote learning from the time that school closed. And it was overwhelming at times for everybody involved. I mean, there's days that I didn't eat breakfast until 10 a.m. and didn't shower until 2 p.m. And didn't see my children because they were locked in their rooms while I was working. But just front loading has really paid off. So we maintained the school calendar is one thing I want to highlight, where we actually continued with our school conferences. We normally have student-led conferences, and they had to be repackaged and turned into parent-teacher conferences, with a focus and a lens on remote learning versus reflection. And we also knew that attendance and the requirements of students checking in at 9:30 a.m., as you can see on the right-hand side, we use social media to promote that message, really paid off. We had an average of 98% attendance across our school. We're a middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th, with approximately 250 students. And it was phenomenal. And there was also a time to norm because families didn't know, or they said they didn't know, that the students were required to check in by 9:30. So by integrating the operations team with our instructional team, we were able to communicate that message and be on the same page. And we definitely were sprinting towards spring break after accomplishing all of those pieces and being attentive to our families. We didn't plan to do a chat with the leadership team via Zoom for our families, but we found that our scheduled coffee with the principal wasn't going to happen until after spring break, and that was too long. So we created kind of an impromptu opportunity for them and had an amazing turnout. But needless to say, we were definitely ready for spring break once that arrived.
So
I'm going to turn it over to Kelly.
Oh, thank you, Vanessa. What we heard from teachers was there are so many resources available to them right now. There's so many websites to keep track of. There's many emails coming through. And what they asked for were landing pages. So one-stop shop where they could find all of the key links and tools specific to our school to help them stay organized. So the screenshot on the left is an image of our GALS staff landing page for any link or any website or document that teachers would need to reference regularly during this time of remote learning. And the image, the scrolling picture on the right-hand side, is a snapshot of what we're calling our staff remote learning manual. And this is something that we have had since day one, knowing that we were going into remote learning. And so our teachers use this to reference expectations of them in terms of attendance or guidance on lesson planning during this time, as well as the wellness team coach's role during this time of remote learning. And having wellness team coaches is something that GALS does regularly every year. A wellness team coach is a grade level teacher who meets with a group of about 15 to 17 students in the morning for breakfast, and then they work out together for our movement modules. And so we thought the best way to keep track of every single student and to split them up so teachers have the smallest cohorts possible was to split the groups up by wellness team. So every morning, students check in with their wellness team coach by phone, text, or email, and that's how we do attendance. And there's also wellness team Google Classrooms where teachers post different school events or school resources. So that's the one person that they're guaranteed to talk to every day. So this document includes just some expectations and guidance on those roles, and we'll share this resource with you at the end of our presentation. And so these are the 3 essential questions that our leadership team always lands back on when we're developing and sharing new systems and routines with our students and staff. And I specifically want to call out the second bullet point because we're going to go into some more detail on that on the next slide. It is our #1 priority to preserve bandwidth of students and teachers. We're in this for the long haul. We are doing remote learning through the end of the school year and through summer school, and we want our systems to be manageable and easy to maintain for the foreseeable future. So we have developed a few tracking systems of ways that we can record data and reference data so that we know no students are falling through the cracks. And so each staff member knows what their expectation and what their role is in terms of supporting students. So in terms of our data and our tracking, our wellness team coaches will use a Google Sheet to track attendance each morning, and then the office knows to follow up with any students who are marked absent, and that can be adjusted and added to throughout the day. We need to be flexible, and we understand that some families might only be working with one phone and the student can't check in until 2 p.m. that day, and as long as they make contact with their wellness team coach, we are tracking their attendance and marking them as present for the work they did that day. We also use what we call a week at a glance, and that's the picture on the bottom right. And this was created by teachers with the feedback of parents. So it integrates what we need for compliance and tracking minutes that students are working. It integrates the needs of teachers for being organized for a whole week with their lesson plans and assignments, as well as their Zoom office hours. We do 2 hours a week of office hours when every teacher in your grade level is available to support with questions, tutoring, if you just want to pop in and say hello. And then it also integrates the needs and the asks of our parents. So what we heard from them was they really wanted a one-stop shop, a one-page, very similar to our landing pages for teachers. Parents wanted one place where they can go and see, what is my student expected to do this week? What are the links so I can see more details? When is it due? And when are those teachers available? So we put together this week at a glance, and it is also going to be linked at the end of the presentation so you can look at it in more detail. One other document that we use for our teachers is what we call the student support log. That'll also be linked at the end. And this is a place every Thursday during our staff team meetings. We ask the teachers as a grade level to add any students who they think could use some support or follow-up in terms of social-emotional wellness. We have a very strong mental health team at GALS and a very strong counseling team. And so that is all continuing through remote learning. It's just happening virtually. So we ask teachers to let us know who might need support with mental health, with technology, or even with food and accessing meals. And then our staff, our office ops team, they all know their roles in terms of following up with those students and supporting those families. So another item in terms of creating a strong culture and maintaining a strong culture is communication and being visible and transparent with families. So we communicate with families regularly, and this is something we've done as a school community even before we went into remote learning. We will publish newsletters through a program called SMORE, and those come out every other week, sometimes weekly on a normal school day, on a normal school year. Now that we're in remote learning, they're coming out much more frequently. And anytime that we post a SMORE newsletter, we will email it to parents, staff, and students. We will also use a school flyer app to push out a notification and a text, letting families know there is a new newsletter out to be read. If you use Remind or Parent Square, all of those parent communication apps they're all very similar. We'll also post the newsletter on our website and our social media pages. So we put it on every single platform for parents and students to have access to. And we have been sending 2 different types of newsletters. The first newsletter is specific to COVID-19 updates, and that is hyper-localized to the San Fernando Valley in Los Angeles, where our school is located and where most of our families are commuting from to come to our school. So we'll include information on meal programs in the area, grocery store hours in the area, hotlines specific to our city. We'll also include bite-sized snapshots of any updates that we receive from our mayor's office. And then we also are publishing a newsletter specific to remote learning, and that's the picture you see on this screen. And those newsletters focus more on the instructional side, what is happening on the day-to-day in Google Classrooms and in Zoom meetings, and that is keeping teachers, parents, and students all connected through those newsletters. So when we think about our goal of moving from surviving to thriving, we think of a place where we are successful, confident, all of our stakeholders are kind of in a good flow. And that really comes from transparency, continuing our differentiation support for families, and SEL support. So one snapshot you'll see down here is of a program that we use called Scodal. And we use this for our social emotional check-ins. And the wellness team coach will post a link. Students will report back how they're feeling, if there's anything that they want to share with their teachers. And then our staff know that they can follow up with individual students from there. Another example of how we differentiate parent communication is, as I mentioned before, some families are still getting used to using computer technology every day. We just got hotspots in the hands of all of our families who needed them. So when it comes to doing the daily attendance, we're flexible with what time that happens during the day and when that check-in happens during the day. But we, by the end of the day, want to make sure that we have a touch point with every student and their wellness team coach. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Miss Vanessa. We go by first names at GALS, so Miss Kelly and Miss Vanessa. There you go.
So if you think about it, now we're all in the same boat. We're all caught up now, and we're on the week of 4/13. For us, it's the first day of quarter 4 was Monday, and you can basically have countdown till the end of the year. And typically, this last quarter has like its own seasons within the quarter. Like you have your testing season, you have your award season, you have your, maybe it's your cramming reviewing essential standards time, and you have to flip that around and reassess what really matters right now and how to make the school year end on a high note. So going back to, it's all the stuff that's kind of happening behind the scenes that makes that possible. We showed you the week at a glance logs, and that came out of a response that, as noted, we had needed to do it for compliance. Families are asking, what is my kid supposed to do? I can't stay on top of them. I ask them if they're done with the homework. They tell me they did, and it's not. So we're establishing that protocol, and it supports Miss Kelly and myself to make sure that the instructional planning is done well and it's organized for the entire week. Because everyone is on a high learning curve for ed tech, in-house we have some teachers that are hyper motivated and are naturals at this. So we've been offering in our weekly PD sessions like these mini workshops. We've had 2 teachers last time do, one did screencastify, one did ed puzzle. And then the list of the other ones are platforms that our teachers we have expertise in, that love using it, are very comfortable with it. And some teachers have even been earning certifications that are available at these sites. So that's been keeping them motivated and interested. When it's now this calibrating time and we're setting in, you don't want to lose that energy from the students, continue to do these school culture events that are non-academic and purely for engagement purposes. We shared with you our Friday community meetings. We shared that this week is Spirit Week. Canva is so fantastic for doing just ready-made posts that are Instagram ready or they're sized correctly for Facebook. Our 8th graders are definitely looking forward to their special dance. So we'll do a virtual dance party, and I've been learning a lot from professional DJs on Instagram on how to do that. And just the little routines and rituals that we can maintain. The kids are so savvy now that they've had 3 weeks of learning how to work with Zoom, that we're able to continue to do things like open mic, where we give them a prompt and then they complete the sentence and get to share out. So if you look at the next 3 weeks, this is kind of that window of testing season. Again, we're in middle school, so we would have had CAS on top of SBAC. And we look at it now as an opportunity or a luxury to extend the learning. And I know that we have to be careful with that language, because some teachers might be like, how is it a luxury if I have to, continue to plan lessons? And so we've already talked through that as a team on how to frame it when we discuss it with the teachers. One example to keep things fresh is to use like guest teachers. And this was piloted prior to closing, where the 7th and 8th grade math teachers swapped one day, and the kids absolutely loved it. And it helped inform them about the kids that they were going to receive next year. And it helped the 7th grade teacher to get some FaceTime and revisit with her old students. So that's pretty fantastic. You can come up with those creative ways to keep the online instruction fun, and it doesn't like cost you anything. And it's a way to build that intergrade level collaboration. Hopefully at this point in time too, we will have received more direction on what we can do with summer school. And we're using this time right now to brainstorm the kids who are going to need it. Obviously, a purely online learning option isn't effective for the less engaged students. So we're brainstorming a hybrid option that we'll hopefully have ready by then. And if we go to the final 3 weeks, this is going to look so different for all of us. Some of us are ending our instructional days sooner than later than originally anticipated, but anticipate that everything you would normally do is going to take so much longer. As you can see, we over communicate, and that timeline and that engagement with stakeholders to make sure we're all on the same page and doing that transparency is a lot of work, but then the messages are very clear. You just have to account for that. So you have to backwards plan. Parents obviously still want to be part of any award ceremonies you do at the end of the year. So you'd have to like schedule things in advance and communicate that. And I just think that if you can adjust the end of the school year calendar to make this happen in a less rushed way, it will just ensure that you end your school year on a high note too. So there's a lot of things that normally are taking place now that can derail school culture, or they can amplify it and improve it for the better. I think Teacher Appreciation Week is something that's on our minds that has a lot to do with school climate. We have a tradition around this where each day represents a different theme or different way to show appreciation. And we rely heavily on parent engagement. And pretty much all those things that we do, like none of them can really translate virtually except for like the Thank You Thursdays. And then we're going to continue to engage our para parents to support us with that. Teacher observations and evaluations, I participate in a lot of like groups like Principal Life, which is run by We Are Teachers on Facebook, or the Global Educator Collective. And this is coming up, and obviously it can be sticky. But if you establish an expectation now of, I'd love to join you on your next Zoom lesson that you're doing, and it's not about evaluation, it's not for stakes, and then if you're going to have one about it, observation evaluation, it doesn't feel abnormal because you've chimed in or jumped in into their other lessons. So we've been doing that casually and highlighting it at our PD, and that's helps a lot. We still need to decide if we're doing observations and evaluations, and we have to decide that quickly because it doesn't make sense to do this at the later half of the quarter. If you're not familiar with the platform that works well in this context, we've been using Teach Boost since we've opened, and it's just one that is pretty cost effective and that I recommend can support you with that. Finally, at the end of the day, if you wanted to plot this whole concept for yourself and think about how to be the most successful and end with a high note on school climate and school culture, there's a really awesome toolkit by a Bellwether Education Partner that was just produced. So when you go to that link, it's like a blog, and then there's a link for the full toolkit with downloads into an Excel spreadsheet. So the graphic organizers are basically provided for you. Obviously, we didn't use that toolkit, but when I opened it and looked at it, a lot of the steps that they tell you, recommend to take to organize your strategy reflect like the process that we did. And then some of you may be familiar with Dr. Meg Polysock. She's one of the co-founders of Synergy Academies, and she posted a blog post recently with short articles on the leadership side of things and how to manage well and ensure positive climate even in a virtual context. So I recommend both of these options for you and your leadership team. So we just want to say thank you for taking some time with us. A lot of the things that we shared with you, we could have gone deeper on, like the virtual parent conferences. We are going to be part of option 3's virtual learning center. So there will be something coming up soon. If you're part of that community, we'll share more. Our presentation materials are already linked there, and you can definitely stay in touch with us and see what's going on through our social media. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, team. That was really informative. I love this idea of moving from surviving to thriving. I think we could all learn from that. I think we have one question coming in, a few actually. So the first one is, could you share a little more about Skodal?
Sure. So Skodal is an app that was created in Australia, and one of our substitute partners introduced us to it. So Scoot Education. It's very simple. The kids have 3 questions. The first one is just to select an emoji on their mood. The second one is the why, and they select a gift for like, what's the reason? Like, is it family? Is it relationships? Is it schoolwork? And then on the third question, it's optional. They would like to type into the box and tell a little bit more about their mood. So it's kind of like a dipstick, and we do it twice a week just to capture really quickly. We had the students try it before we dismissed, but it's very easy to navigate, and the dashboard is very clear on the administrator's end to see what to do. So if you wanted to be introduced to pilot that, I'm happy to facilitate that.
Great, thank you. We have a couple people asking about the presentation materials, which we'll send out to all of the attendees. So obviously you can't click on the slide through the webinar, but we'll send those out to you guys, so don't worry.
Good.
If anyone wants to be taken off mute, feel free to raise your hand and we'll take you off mute if you want to ask your question. Give people a couple minutes to think of questions.
I'm Jacqueline.
Oh yeah.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, perfect. So I know you touched a little on like the 8th grade dance party and end of the year events. Do you have any ideas yet for your ceremonies and what you're doing moving forward now, or if you're holding off until a certain date, or how you're handling that portion of it?
Yeah, that came up right away on our leadership chat. It was the first question I received from our families, and this was before spring break. We had already committed to doing an in-person ceremony that would happen, and we told them in the fall. We're like, we can't give you a date right now because we don't know when we're going to be permitted to use the auditorium on campus. We're co-located with the high school, and so we'd rather not commit, to a date with you because we just don't want to change it again. But the families are really, really passionate about doing an in-person graduation. So like, we're happy to honor that. It's just, not going to happen in June or July.
We always end the school year with our community meeting honoring and celebrating the 8th graders. And so we ask them to let us know, what awards have they received? What teams have they been on? What are they proud of accomplishing over the last 3 years? And that question was included in an 8th grade survey that we had students fill out right before spring break. So we will use that information to likely do something similar, but through a virtual community meeting where we are honoring all of the students. And then, as Vanessa said, some virtual awards / graduation online with the goal of doing it in person.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any more questions from anyone? I know one of the questions coming from our team was, how are you guys thinking about assessments? Are you doing internal assessments? How are you handling that?
Yeah, it's been challenging because we are like a mastery inspired model. We believe in standards-based grading and believe in students having multiple opportunities to master standards, and it's not really translating in a virtual environment. So one of the resources that we'll show you how we are grading on completion, but when possible, we'll grade on assessments. We still continue to use Achieve 3000, where I guess you can call it power users of that platform, and our students are continuously engaging on it Teachers were receiving text over spring break because their Lexiles calibrate every month to demonstrate the growth gains or losses. And students grew like 100 points and we're celebrating those successes. So
Wow.
that's one where we'll grade on mastery, because everyone is very clear on what it means to be successful in an Achieve article. Moby Max and Khan, Brain Pop, you have the capacity to grade on mastery on those as well. Ed Puzzle even. So it's a mix, but we definitely took the pressure off of the teachers to say all the grades in the grade book have to be mastery based. We used to have an expectation of 3 grades per week. We're more flexible now of saying it's 2 to 3 grades.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Definitely challenging for people. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions coming in. Jenny, did you have anything?
Let's see. Heidi says, thank you all for your hard work. No, nothing to add on my end. I think we will definitely get this posted. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to our team and we can link you up with these leaders who have been sharing great tips.
I did want to close out by sharing with you all that we are the Girls Athletic Leadership School, so movement is a key pillar of ours. And if you visit our website, we are going to be publishing PE movement materials. So you can log on to our Zoom and Instagram and YouTube live links and do workouts with us if you feel inspired and even want to take a break from your computer and your chair during the day. So we'd love to see you on there that way.
Awesome. Sounds amazing. All right. Well, with that, I just want to say a huge thank you to you guys for jumping with the opportunity to share with us today. We really appreciate everything you're doing for the charter community and your willingness to share. And to all of you who attended, thank you so much for attending. When you exit the webinar, you'll be auto-directed to a very short survey. We'd really appreciate any feedback you have, either for CCSA or for our presenters today. And we hope you and your family stay healthy and happy. So thanks again very much, guys.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.